For a very long time, I used the 3-stage model for the evolution of any relationship. And I borrowed it from David Data, and I listened to a lot of people who were studying with data. So John Wineland, Mark Groves, Brian Reeves, they were all using the same 3 stages of codependence, independence, and interdependence. And recently, I read a book from John Bradshaw, who was an educator who wrote a lot about interpersonal trauma and addiction. And he has a number of great books and a few very good lecture series that helped me a lot when I was doing really deep work around, especially shame. He's got an amazing book on shame. And he uses a 4-stage model that I'm borrowing right now and ever since, because David Data deals with sexual polarity. That's like a very small, very dedicated circle of influence. John Wineland expanded that definition into intimacy, which still has the same core, but it deals with a bit looser, a bit broader information set, data set. And everybody else who studies with those guys are kind of dealing with the same bubble, the same circle of influence. John Bradshaw, I loosely Googled him. He doesn't have any sort of specific psychology background, but for some reason he dealt a lot with childhood developmental stages. And the way he explains his 4 stages of a relationship is through childhood development, but he emphasizes it, and you can map the same model onto any kind of relationship, that it applies to any new situation where you have to re-establish yourself. So the first establishment is you as a person in this lifetime. Then when you go to a new school, when you get a new job, when you meet a person that is significantly impacting your life, you fall in love, you lose a person who was significant, you move town, any kind of new situation when you have the opportunity or you're forced to somehow reinvent yourself or just reevaluate who you are and what you're made of, and you have to recirculate the same neural pathways that were active during your initial development, during your childhood development. So the 4 stages that he uses instead of the 3 is dependence, counter-dependence, independence, and interdependence. And you can map the same 4 stages onto romantic relationships. But what I found especially useful is that his way of looking at the world is always going back to your primary caretakers, your very first experience, your parental bonds, your very early childhood experiences, and then maps those feeling states, those identifications onto your romantic relationships, your intimate situations, your sexual polarity. And it feels like that the other guys start from the end goal and they work their way back. And John Bradshaw's system just somehow felt like that you go right back to the beginning, figure out what didn't work well, and rebuild yourself sequentially. It just felt better to my nervous system. I was able to deal with his model of looking at relationships better than with just the 3 stages system. So he starts with, instead of codependency, he starts with dependency. I'm going to use childhood developmental stages, but you will be able to map the exact same feeling states onto any new situation that you encounter. The first stage, you are dependent. When you're codependent with someone, is the outcome of you not having your dependency needs met in the first place, and you're dealing with some kind of stuck emotions, stuck needs, unmet needs traumatic experiences that now you're looking a partner for, and you found a matching partner and they haven't had their dependency needs met, and you haven't had your dependency needs met, so you become codependent with each other. But that's not the way of, at least for me, I haven't been able to find a solution within the codependent framework, but I have been able to find a solution in the dependent framework. When you're dropped into a new situation, you are inherently dependent on your surroundings. You're the fish out of water, you're the new girl in town, you're the person you're in a relationship with a new person that you have to meet, that you have to experience, that you have to learn, you have to study. You don't know anything about your new town, your new job, your new situation, your new person. The surroundings that you're dropping into knows more, knows better. The partner that you're meeting knows themselves better than you know them. You know yourself better than your partner knows you when you meet in the beginning. The stage of dependency is, in a childhood state, heavily reliant on the mother relationship. As children, our physical safety, survival, and emotional healthy development is completely dependent on the mother or the primary caretaker, but it is usually the mother. And it has those soft, nurturing, motherly, caretaking feelings. Obviously, fathers can do the same thing for children, but there is a physical, chemical bond between the person who exits a body and the body that they just exited. There is still a bond between those two people, stronger than it can ever exist with a father or a surrogate parent or an adoptive parent. So the first stage, when you are purely dependent on your surroundings, if you, at the very beginning, at the very early childhood developmental stages, if you haven't met those developmental needs, you will go into every single new situation feeling helpless, feeling like you are overly depending on your environment, on your circumstances, feeling like you need to be taken care of, feeling like you are not able to handle the situation, feeling emotionally overwhelmed, feeling overly stressed, feeling anxious all the time, worrying about stuff all the time, not being able to connect with people from the very core of your being, but having to put on a facade that you don't agree with, that you don't like. Those are all forms of the very early dependency needs not being met. I think I'm going to do a completely separate breakdown on how to heal those. If at any point you've got a question, just let me know, because I'm going to be, if I go deeper into this, it's going to be a very long video and I'm going to be jumping all over the place. I'm just going to go through the stages and go through what's wrong with them and what haven't happened. And at some point we'll talk about it, how to right the wrongs. The second stage, that was the first time when something clicked in that is the developmental stage where I got stuck. And I still to this day play out those unmet needs, trying to get those unmet needs in every single new situation. It's the stage of counter dependence, the terrible twos, when a child for the first time separates themselves psychologically from the mother. You're not the same physical being. You have your own mind. You start to recognize your separateness psychologically. You start to understand that you are an individuation, but all that you know so far for a year and a half, 2 years, 2.5 years of your entire existence, everything that you learned, all the muscle memory that you learned, the way to move, the very early ways of how to talk, anything that you have been experiencing, that you're interacting with the world, was based on this undivided bond with another human creature. So now you're just purely learning where the other person ends and where you begin. It's not fully individuation yet. You're not an individual. You're still dependent on your parents, on your caretakers in so many ways. But you want to establish counter dependence. You want to separate yourself and you want to learn your boundaries so that you form an identity of who you are. Who is this thing? You're just looking at you can catch babies like literally looking at their own hands, be like, I think this is me. I think I've done something right now that other people recognize that was me and not my mother. It's fascinating to watch babies. So that stage, when you haven't had your needs met at that stage, this is the stage that you have an innate need to go out and experience yourself with the full safety, trust, and security that you have a home base to go home to. Your parent, which you probably haven't gotten, probably none of us have gotten these needs fully met. Your parents need to provide a fully unconditional, safe space that allows for you to go off for as long as you want, however you want, knowing that when you come back, they are going to be waiting for you. Now, it doesn't mean that let the kids out and they are going to come back whenever they come back. That's the parent who, like, with every step follows you, but allows you to walk on your own. They only interfere when you're about to hurt yourself, but not before. They let you be yourself. They let you stand on your own 2 feet. They let you do your own thing, and they are there safely watching you. So you know that you have a very safe, very supportive, very stable, very consistent home base right there, accessible, available, not somewhere neglectedly far out of sight. It's right there, but at the same time, it's not interfering with who you are. It's not trying to modulate your behavior. It's not trying to prescribe your behavior. It's not forming you, making you, forcing you into being or becoming someone. It's just witnessing who you are and experiencing you, meeting you for the first time. Before that point, even your parents, they don't know who you are. They have never quite met your personality. This is the first time when they start to recognize who you are going to become. And they're not going to interfere with that, but they're going to facilitate the safe environment when you can just explore and experience yourself. Now, if that hasn't happened, you will have extreme issues with authority figures. You probably don't like working under a boss. You probably don't enjoy falling in line, following orders. You're probably going to be jaywalking like a motherfucker. Just rule breaking for the sake of rule breaking. And it doesn't have to be a big thing, but as long as someone just goes, this is the rule, this is how you have to do it, something in your mind just goes, is it though? I don't think I have to do anything. And you don't have to be aggressive about it. I'm not particularly an aggressive person, but I'm gonna have my way, and I'm going to do it my way, just so that it is my way. Just so I figure out who I am in this situation, how I fit in. It was a revelatory experience. I'm like, whoa, this is not independence. This is just pure counterdependence. There is something in my nervous system that doesn't trust prescribed ways of being. I don't like habits. I don't like rituals. I don't like traditions. There's something about it that just goes, I'm not gonna do it that way. That counterdependence stage is where I need to have my needs met. And that's the stage that I need to work on to give myself the feeling states and give myself the safety and security and the exploration and the bravery that I didn't have at the time. That mixture, that cocktail of you're fully safe and secure, and at the same time you're courageous enough to go and be yourself. Now the third stage is independence. This is where your psychological personality is formed. This is where you form your belief systems. This is where you consciously have a cognition of you are and who you are. In the beginning, in the terrible twos, you're just like, you literally taste the entire world. You put everything into your mouth. You just want to experience your world through your body, through your senses, through whatever is. I'm sorry, I'm still laughing at that. It's so me. You just want to experience the world around you through your physicality. Later in life, when this is the first time when you actually start socializing, like this is the kindergarten stage, the preschool stage. John Bradshaw describes it as like strictly preschool stage, so up until like 7-8 years old. Especially nowadays, I would stretch this period out into 10, 11, 12, pre-teen rather than preschool, just because the way we're treating each other. It's an interesting social pool out there, and the fact that kids are living a life online rather than having interpersonal experiences, it means that they develop those interpersonal skills much later. So they develop their individuality much later, because maybe at some point, maybe we are going to completely merge with the machine. I'm going off on a tangent. I said to myself that I'm not going to do this. No. Maybe at some point we are going to merge with the machine. But until then, people who still have their soul and spirit intact, we need other people to define who we are. Some we're going to bond with, some we're going to agree with, some we're going to disagree with. And we have to form the social skills how to exist in each other's company. So that individuation stage is the stage where you form your identity. You first start to recognize your likes and dislikes. You first start to organize systems in your mind. You start to categorize things. You start to put things into boxes. You start to pigeonhole yourself. You start to experience yourself in context. You feel where you belong and where you don't belong. And it's a highly sensitive state for kids because we're so socially dependent when we're children, and it's so painful when we don't fit in, where we don't belong, and so many of us feel like that we don't belong anywhere. So it's very easy never to have those individuation needs met in the first place. So every single time now you get into a new situation, you just want to fit in no matter what. Funny enough, if you haven't have those needs met, you respond with two extremes. Either you're always going to stand on the sideline, you're always going to be the outsider, and you embrace being the outsider. Maybe even you're playing into the outsider, and you're using all sorts of social signals that you just disagree with the system and you're completely against it. Or deep down inside, all you want is to belong. And you're so willing to do anything, give anything, sacrifice anything, that you don't even recognize who you are, or that you give up or suppress who you are in order to have those needs met, that you belong. Funny enough, if you as a child haven't had your individuality needs met, that's when you just want to belong as an adult. So the way to not be so needy and clingy is to revisit that stage of your life, that pre-teen stage, and meet the needs that haven't been met through that individuation stage. And then the stage of Interdependence is in everyone's book, whether you're only looking at sexual polarity or intimacy or relationships in general term, or whether you're just looking at a very broad term of psychological evolution, interrelational evolution. Interdependence is a stage of having met every other developmental stages, so you feel so fulfilled, so whole and complete, that you have something to give. That now you feel like you belong, so now you want to contribute. You don't want to take from your group, you want to give and take. You don't want to steal energy from other people. You don't want to lie to other people. You don't want to cheat on other people. You don't want to mistreat other people, abuse them, neglect them, not answer their texts, not engage in parties, not even attend parties, avoid social situations, sit in the corner all by yourself, just be angry at the whole world because they don't understand you. But you're so whole and complete, and it doesn't mean that you don't want a partner, you don't need a partner, you don't need other people. You're so whole and complete that you are happy to be with others, and you're just as happy giving as receiving. You're just as capable to open up yourself and accept help or ask for help when you need it as you're capable of giving help when other people need it, because you recognize others' needs, and needs are not a weakness in your eyes, but just a natural human trait. Anywho, for me, this 4-stage system was way more helpful than the 3-stage system. I feel like there's so much more that I want to talk about, so ask specific questions and then we'll have a chat.